Now, what I'm not saying is these mass Karens and these authoritarian lockdown measures, were, dare I say, in the cupboard, and they just pulled it out when this pandemic happened. And they're worrying about whether this may work or not on the total population. If we tell someone to stay away because there's a secret deadly virus around. If people stay in, then they go, we got it. Social engineering. Who thought that this wouldn't be expanded on? Oh, it's going to be expanded on. I remember growing up when I lived in California, and there would be, they call them SIG alerts, I think. Smog alerts, essentially. If there was too much smog in, like, say, not necessarily in San Diego, but when the family members were, when I would visit them in Los Angeles, they would have smog alerts. And they would say, hey, if you're old, or if you're respiratory deficient, or if you're infant, you probably couldn't go outside because there's too much smog. The rest of you, you're fine. And so they have these smog alerts, green, yellow, and red. Most of the time it was yellow, and especially when the morning haze would come in. The point is that they would issue these, health, essentially guidelines. I would say, if you're old, stay in. Here come the climate lockdowns. PJM's Jeff Reynolds reported on the proposed climate emergency legislation that would declare climate change a national emergency. If passed, it would give the potatoes sweeping powers and unlock billions in spending. Since there is no quote-unquote climate emergency, at the moment the radical green progressive douchebag liberal a-holes have to create one. And the more dire and frightening they can make it, the more powerful they will become. Imagine that. They said 15 to stop the spread. Stay in. Lockdown. Wear this face diaper. I know we said not to, but now you need to wear it. Now you need to wear two. Well, the science isn't in yet, but until it's in, wear two. What about three? All they're doing is ratcheting it up. They're like, okay, 15 days. Then we're all the way up here. You can't see it. They're saying, well, we need to lock down completely, 100% across the board. You lose your job? Nah, we have a job, but you don't. Don't worry about it. AOC and her cohorts in Congress will do their best, but it's likely that the worst of the Green New Deal will never be enacted, even with the declaration that climate change is a national emergency. But suppose President Potato and other Western leaders were to declare a climate lockdown? In a climate lockdown, governments would limit private vehicle use, ban the consumption of red meat, and impose extreme energy-saving measures, while fossil fuel companies would have to stop drilling. As preposterous as that sounds, it doesn't sound that preposterous, by the way, boys and girls in Lazo Land. It's actually being seriously considered in some circles. From The Spectator, Karl Lauterbach, an MP for German Social Democratic Party, I wouldn't join anything that's tied to Social Democratic Party in Germany. You get what I mean? Die Welt last December that we need measures to deal with climate change that are similar to the restrictions on personal freedom imposed to combat the pandemic. There you are, folks. This was a sort of test run, if you will. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's right here. We all knew, if you were smart, that these lockdowns were just sort of a test bed to see how much you'll take government imposing on your life. Now we know that they can get away with a lot without us people out there doing anything about it, per se, like stand up and protest peacefully. By the way, Susan Wojcicki. How long before this theory makes its way into news outlets and politicians' speeches here? Of course, this idea will be explained away as simply following the science. The lockdowns, which began in summer of 2020, contributed to what scientists are calling the largest drop in CO2 emissions in years. Almost like it was. Interesting. Almost like it was, como se dice, planned that way. Wow, this is getting kind of crazy. The largest reason for this was a decrease of approximately 40% in automobile airplane transport. The World Economic Forum praised this figure in a blog post titled "Emissions Fell During Lockdown. Let's Keep It That Way." Imagine, they all knew that everyone knows that emissions in the air will go down when people don't use their cars. But of course, you cripple the economy. But isn't that what they want to do during the Great Reset? Is cripple the economy. Interesting. John Kerry is telling us the conditions of the Paris Agreement are inadequate. This begs the question, what would be adequate? Oh, it gets better, boys and girls. As the global climate elite push eating bugs and staying home to save the earth on the masses, it's worth posing the question, what will be adequate? With the Global Economic Forum in Davos approaching in April, we're going to start hearing terms such as climate equality, climate reset, a play on the WEF's Great Reset, more frequently. We'll probably also start hearing calls for climate lockdowns. And we will, boys and girls. In truth, the real agenda of the global elites in Davos and the ivory tower of academia is to destroy capitalism. This is the way to do it. This would happen not by government takeovers of industries, such as nationalizing Rust Belt companies like steel, auto, and rubber, but simply making their products obsolete. And the best way to do that is by locking down the economy. Presidents have used the National Emergency Declaration 70 times since the legislation was enacted in 1976, and the lockdowns due to the COVID crisis could very well be used to justify climate lockdown. Again, they rolled it out. They said, you got to do it to save grandma's life. Now the government goes, look what we can do with a pliant electorate, a pliant population out there that'll just go and do whatever the government says. Well, not every one of us is going to do that. It's almost like they want this to happen, or they were just waiting for this to happen, such as a pandemic like this, so they could start instituting certain control measures. This was always the risk with the mass implementation of lockdowns. Once your leaders enforce one under the guise of public health, they will not simply set aside their power to do so again, writes Stephen Miller in The Spectator. I'd start stockpiling gasoline if I were you. So, like I said, they didn't create this virus. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But let's just say it got out, which it did. And so the government always knew that if we can lock down the people, we can't lock the people down. We need a public health emergency. And then we'll see how much crap the government will put on the people before they lash out. We haven't really lashed out as far as the public as over this climate bullcrap. You have a lot of mass Karens out there. A lot of people are sort of right now sort of ignoring this crap going on. Like, I'm not going to wear a mask anymore because, the vaccine's out and we eventually will get it. So there's only 99.999% chance of survival if you contract it. What am I worried about? So when the government says you got to lock down because of a health, they can always step it up one and say, we need to lock down because there's a smog alert. There's too much smog there. We can't have X amount of cars. So if your car number at the end of your license plate is a through J and 1 through 4, you can't drive your car on Tuesday. Now they did this in Ecuador. If the last number on your license plate was like say 1, you could drive it Monday. You couldn't drive it Monday. I think 1 and 2. 3 and 4 was Tuesday. 5 and 6 was Wednesday. Thursday was 7 and 8. Friday was 9 and 0. And the weekends you could drive if you want. You really think that's sort of a lockdown? They're saying that a restriction on driving and travel from your car. Buses obviously were allowed. So if you wanted to go anywhere, if you had a job, you got on a bus and went. Or you carpooled or whatever. Don't you think that the government will try to do this? They already are in some instances. But now they know that as far as the public out there, we're going to sort of capitulate, just whatever, okay, fine, I'll just go along with this climate lockdown. If you don't think the government will lock down again over climate and wrapping it up in a nice little bow and present saying that it's a public health emergency because the climate is bad, so we need to lock people down so you can't go to work. If you think the governments of the world aren't going to do that, then you're as stupid as I think you are. God help you.